Hello, everyone. Go, Erica. Erica is
I was
just an
dancing.
amazing dancer. Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to episode number 40. Episode number 40 of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. Erica, we have to plan something big for the 1-year anniversary of the show.
Absolutely. We're already 40. It's like 40 years old. It's amazing.
40 years. That's a long time. Yes. This show is created as a safe space where cancer survivors and cancer supporters come together to share their stories and connect, as well as find resources that provide healing, hope, and resilience. My name is Tim Sohn, a 15-year cancer survivor, host of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, and a live streaming producer and coach for nonprofits, businesses, and entrepreneurs who want to make or are making a positive impact.
And hi, I am Erica Campbell. I myself am a 4-year cancer survivor. I currently lead a nonprofit called the Pinky Swear Foundation, helping kids with cancer and their families. I'm a longtime volunteer, and I'm extremely passionate about this space and creating community and connection. And I have a slightly new background. So today we're having this exciting talk with Russ Hedge. This one is my favorite. It says, "Hope changes everything." And I think that might be a theme. And if you need to hear that today, land that with you. Hope changes everything. So thank you so much for joining us. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I love this part of the show where we get to hear from this amazing community that spans all 50 states and sometimes even internationally. So let us know where you're dialing in from today. We appreciate you being here. And we want this to be a conversation. So ask questions, make comments, and engage in the chat. Please also wave and say hello to somebody else who's in the chat too.
Yes, definitely. And before we introduce our amazing guest for tonight, we want to mention a few things. First, a reminder that this time of 3:00 Eastern time on Tuesdays is the official new time for Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. And now Erica wants to share some other exciting news with you.
This is groundbreaking, Tim. We are going to have the first ever Perspectives on Cancer, or Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer in-person event. It is coming up on September 10th in Pennsylvania, and it's now free. It's my favorite 4-letter word. Thank you to our sponsors who've made that possible, including Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and Pinky Swear Foundation, X Cures, Russ Hedge, wink, wink, you'll hear from him shortly, Jim Fuse, Veronica Jeans, Carol and George Sohn. Those are your parents, Tim. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's my parents.
I know. Retruss and Chasing Joy. So you can sign up at perspectivesoncancer.com. And this is new. This is like a new announcement. Rachel Druckenmiller who was part of the Open Your Hearts and Wallets fundraiser a few months ago. She sang the Let It Be, so beautifully at that event. She's going to be singing and speaking in person at this event. So please join. And she's going to be giving some inspirational talks. And I know many people are going to want to meet her in person. And so please join us September 10th.
Yes, definitely. I am so excited. And there's been so much behind the scenes work going on. And we have people coming from even Canada now. So definitely sign up. You can go to perspectivesoncancer.com to sign up. Like Erica said, the event is free. Thanks to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society and all the sponsors, including Russ Hedge, our guest for today. So speaking of Russ Hedge, our guest for today, today's guest is Russ Hedge, the amazing Russ Hedge.
Woo-hoo!
Russ is one of, just like Erica, her energy is just bouncing off the screen today. Russ is one of the most positive people you will ever meet. His job even says inspiration specialist. And his connection to cancer is that his dad passed from lung cancer 5 years ago. But I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to bring our good friend Russ Hedge on the screen. I could see his energy is going to be bouncing too today also.
Woohoo! I'm bringing the energy. I'm ready. Come on.
Oh my gosh, you are always ready, Russ Hedge. You are an amazing person, first of all. But
you're
you
an
are always
amazing
live
friend.
streaming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I want to say that sometimes when we talk about heavier topics, sometimes people think you have to be very somber. I don't agree with that
Great.
because I think we can celebrate the good things. Like the two of you being cancer survivors, we can celebrate the good things. Why not be upbeat? Why do we have to be sad? I mean, I'm not saying we're not ever sad, but you know what I mean? Why do we have to
Right.
stay in sad all the time? So let's celebrate. Let's celebrate the good things.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And during the about hour of the show, we often run the full range of emotions from laughing to smiling to yes, sad moments also, right? Because it's cancer, but definitely we like to see the good in it all too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
first, we want to thank everyone who's tuning in. We see all of you here blowing up the comments. Jennifer is here from Savannah, Georgia. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Mary Wells is here. She says, hello, everyone. She's in Cleveland,
Hi.
Ohio. Melody is here from Massachusetts.
Hi, Melody.
Jennifer is a breast cancer survivor.
I see you. I see you, Jennifer.
Mark Kageyama is here. Thanks
Hi,
for
Mark.
being here, Mark. He's a guest co-host and also previous guest on the show and a cancer patient himself. So thanks for being here, Mark. We appreciate you being here all the way from California. We really appreciate it. Ellen is here from New Jersey. She says, afternoon greetings, warriors and survivors.
Yes.
Tom is here from Cincinnati. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Christine Killian is back. She
Hi,
says,
Chris.
hi from North Carolina. So welcome. Brian O'Sullivan is here. I'm going to be interviewing him for the in-person Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer conversation.
That's going to be amazing.
Yes. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone who's here. I see you. Jenny Gold is here. Jenny Gold is on her show is the first place that I shared my cancer story. So thanks for being here, Jenny Gold. She says, hi, Tim Sohn and Russ Hedge. Yes. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We are here on Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer with Russ Hedge. And yeah. So Erica, let's get this conversation started.
Yeah. Russ, I'm really excited because I feel like there's some serendipitous moments and some mic drop moments about to happen here today. Russ, your dad passed away from cancer 5 years ago. When he was diagnosed, how did he and you find out that he had cancer?
Yeah, so that's been several years ago, and it was kind of cancer is always a heavy thing, as you both know. And he just, I believe, was at a regular checkup with the doctor and having some issues. He was a lifelong smoker, which did not help.
Yep.
And so and he was having some issues, and they checked him out, and they found that they ended up having to take out most of one lung. And so, I mean, but to your question, the initial trip to the doctor, when he came back and announced to everybody, it was a big deal, even though he was older at that point, in life. He's still, I guess part of me always kind of expected something like that to happen. It sounds bad, but I mean, he's a lifelong smoker. I always thought that there was a really good chance some of that might happen. And but he's your dad. We went through the whole process. It was a long process. I know we're going to talk about that, but it was pretty heavy when it first happened.
How did he tell you?
Well, I think it was just on a regular visit at the dining room table. We were sitting down, and he just, we started talking about things. And I've always been a very positive and upbeat person, and hope that you brought up. I'm always filled with hope, and I knew that they felt pretty confident they could do surgery and take care of it, and I believe that. Yeah. So I mean, that gave me hope right off the bat. Growing up, my dad was my hero and I had amazing parents, and so I know that not everybody's blessed with that. God blessed me amazingly. I mean, my parents were awesome. And so I was very positive and upbeat about the whole thing. I'm like, okay, we're going to beat this. We're going to go in and we're going to get it taken care of.
Yeah.
So Russ, so after you found out he was diagnosed and he found he was diagnosed, then what was the treatment plan after that, or kind of like what happened next?
Yeah, it was a pretty long and grueling um, process because he had surgery. They took out most of one lung, but his other lung wasn't picking up the slack. And he ended up in intensive care for a long time, like a couple months. And then he got out of intensive care in the hospital and then ended up right back in intensive care. So we thought we were going to lose him a few times after the surgery. And I remember Christmas Day, this started in the fall. And I remember Christmas Day that we all ended up spending, my family, so my wife and I and our two kids, and my sister's family, her and her husband and their two kids, we all spent Christmas Day in the cafeteria of the hospital. And they
Oh,
didn't even have turkey or ham or anything. So it was horrible. So anyway,
How
that was the
rude.
worst part. But we
hashtag been there, by the way. Yeah.
I know.
Mhm.
So yeah, and so anyway, it was a long process, but then he made it out of the hospital and things seemed to be picking up. He seemed to be doing better and getting stronger, and yeah, and then he made it several years after that. So
Wow. Well, you talk about, many years. So I know, Russ, that you spent a lot of time as a caregiver, as well as you mentioned your sister. So how did you split your responsibilities with your sister? And how did you juggle your own personal responsibilities? I know that you have a lot going on in your personal life as well. So how did you
yeah.
manage through all that?
Well, it was interesting. It was definitely a shared process through the very beginning. My mom was still very capable and was, taking care of my dad when he came back. And then my sister lived closer. They lived in Oregon City where I grew up. So that's about 45 minutes from where I live. Not like miles and miles away, but just far enough where you just don't run over there. Right.
Yeah,
With traffic, it could be an hour.
Sure.
So
right.
it's just not somewhere you just run to real quick. So I would go on a regular basis, but not as much as my sister. She was
Sure.
closer. She dropped in on them more often. But then I started getting calls from neighbors and things because my mom had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and my dad was falling and getting dizzy and things were happening. First, we thought his was just kind of old age and just
Sure.
being weak from surgery. And my mom, though, was officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So
Mm,
what I did then is I'm the oldest, so I jumped in, I took over. I got them moved closer to me so I could be. They were 10 minutes away from me. Then I moved them into a beautiful senior living
yeah.
community. They started in independent living, and I sold their home with their help. I mean,
Mhm.
they signed and did the stuff, but I did all the work. I sold the home. I got rid of everything. I got them down to their little apartment, basically.
Mhm.
And This community was really nice because it had all the levels of care. Because we knew mom for sure would end up in memory care, and we thought dad might end up in assisted living or whatever. So we made sure it had all the different levels, and those are things I think that are important to anybody when
Yeah.
you're dealing with your parents is thinking about what's ahead. What's ahead with all that. So that ended up all being great. The money that they had, to be honest with you, was from the sale of their home, and I knew they would run out. And yeah, I knew they would probably outlive that. And so we made sure and got them in a Medicaid certified community, which is another really important thing because you got to think ahead. The
Yep.
Medicaid community ended up taking over when my dad only made it 5 months. He passed away 5 months into the independent living apartment. Mom made it another year and a half with help in independent living, and then 3.5 years, not quite, 3+ years in memory care. So she outlived their money, and so Medicaid took over. I know that's going on to two different parents, but it was just something I was thinking
Yeah.
about through that whole process of doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a really heavy burden for you're still a child, you're still their son. And,
Yep.
there's a lot of mixed emotions and grief in that, not only having to sort of parent your own parent, but
Yeah.
then recognizing your own pain as, as a child. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, they're your parents and they took great care of me my whole life and yeah, so having to take over then as the parent basically
Yep.
is weird. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's very strange.
Yep.
And I had to make all the decisions. And my sister deferred to me. They were closer to me now. She had young kids still. She had things going on in her life that took a lot more time. My kids were grown up. So I had more time to deal with it. So she deferred to me, which worked out good because I was right close by. But I took on the majority of the responsibility since she had been doing a little bit more when they lived closer to her,
Yeah.
even though they weren't to that level yet. But she was still keeping an eye on them better. So I took over that, and you're right, it is a lot. I was given some great, excellent advice that I would give to anybody, and that is get help from people who know what they're doing, and don't try to take all the burden on yourself. Um, Something that sticks with me that was the day before my dad passed away were the words of a 20-year-old caregiver who came in. Things were going on. It was really bad at the end with my dad. And she said to me, Mr. Hedge, and I felt like saying, that's my dad. I'm Russ. But anyway, I didn't say that because she would be nice. She says, Mr. Hedge, she said, it's okay. She goes, you be the son, let us be the caregiver. And so, yeah, and that still makes me emotional because what she was doing is giving me permission to relax and know that as far as caregiving medically, because um, he was on hospice at that point too.
Yeah.
They had everything under control, what he needed from a medical and a care perspective. I just needed to be there emotionally, right? I was his son, loving and caring. That's what I needed to do. And really, I'm telling you, those words have rung in my mind ever since she said that to me. It was one of the most profound, amazing things. And she was 20 years old.
Wow. That's an incredible gift. Thank you for sharing that, Russ.
Yeah. And Mark has a question. He says, or asks, you were positive, Russ, but was he, I guess your dad, when he was diagnosed, did he have a positive perspective?
You know, that's interesting. It was interesting because he was in sales and marketing like me and very much loved and a positive person in his life, but that wasn't his natural. He was actually a little bit more towards glass half empty and a little bit more not as outgoing as I'm my mother's son. We're both the woo, sing, dance,
I was going to say, that doesn't sound like you, Russ. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
and he was definitely more even keel, very wanted a quiet time, was more not outgoing. I mean, as much, but he made himself that way. So I think my dad also tended to be very private. He was very traditional.
Yeah.
So he didn't talk to me about, I mean, when I was young, we didn't know anything about money. We didn't know anything about problems. They tried to hide it all. And I mean that in a good way. They were trying to protect us. They felt like they were the adults. They took on all of that burden and responsibility, and we were kids, right? Enjoy life. And that was really a wonderful gift. They worked to try to make my sisters and my life as easy and enjoyable as possible. So when this happened, he was kind of that way, I think. He kind of hid a lot of it. But of course, at this point, I'm involved. The doctors are talking to me, and I know what's going on. But he was kind of, I don't know. He just kind of went through the process and didn't say a lot, honestly.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Russ. And everyone, we're here on Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. Our guest is Russ Hedge. Our Russ is guest Hedge.
Our Russ is guest.
We appreciate you all being here. Russ, could you tell us more about, give us some insight into what your relationship was like with your dad?
Well, I had a fabulous relationship with my parents. I mean, it wasn't always perfect. I went through teenage years where I yelled at my parents and they yelled back at me. But I was a teenager.
Yeah, that's life.
Most of it was awesome. My dad was super family oriented. Well, both my parents were. My dad, though, was really my grandparents, when they got older and then they passed, my dad kind of took on the mantle of the Hedge family. And really, his sisters were younger than him. Other people in the family looked up to my dad. We always had a large home growing up, and so a lot of people came to our house. We were
Oh,
always kind of the center of family activity for a lot of things.
mm,
Yeah. And so it was, yeah, so our relationship was great. In fact, some of my favorite memories, some of it embarrassing, but some of it good. My parents would
do
never
tell.
go away at school. Yeah, they were always there. And of course, I became my parents, right? They were always there. In fact, I'd be down on the football field for practice. I played football all the way through high school. I was, sports. I was involved in everything just because I loved doing so much stuff. I'm down there on the football field, and it was kind of in like a little canyon. And there was we had a pretty big stadium, and but the parking lot was up above. So he would pull up his work truck. He would be in his truck doing some work because he owned his own business, and he'd be watching football practice.
Mm,
Everybody knew my dad was there, and some of the guys would razz me, "Ah, there's your dad again." And but they were so involved that my dad every night would come out with me as a quarterback. He would come out on our street. We lived at the end of a street. We had property. We lived at the very end of a street, and he would come out down in the cul-de-sac area, and we would throw the football. And I needed to throw at least 100 times a night. That was part of my routine.
wow.
Whoa.
He'd come out every night and throw with me and spend time with me. And so he'd go out of his way to make his work schedule around the family. So yeah, our relationship was great. It was great.
Oh, it sounds like an ideal childhood, right? Nothing's ever perfect, but we talked about this earlier. He showed up. And I think that is, I hope, how I am remembered, and what a gift to remember your dad that way. Thank you.
I would never want to change. I can't think of really anything from my childhood that I'd want to change.
Mm,
I mean, I'm sure we all had ups and downs, but I mean, if I was to pick an overall picture of a childhood, I mean, yeah, my parents, they supported me. They wanted me to do anything that I wanted to do. And because of that, I mean, I was in three sports. I was in choir. I was in band. I was in drama. I was in a show group out of Portland. I did all this stuff, and I did it all at the same time. And they supported everything that I did. And so what was great about that, other than the fact that I had a crazy lifestyle even back then, was the fact that they just loved and supported me and whatever I did, and they let me work it out. They just made space so I could do whatever I wanted to do.
yeah. And here you are today, an inspiration specialist, and more. I know your dad is proud, Russ. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I know that he's proud too. Both my parents were so proud of me, and they always expressed that, and that was good. And right down to the final days, I got more. It's interesting because I went through the manly phase with my dad. So once I hit middle school, going into high school, we started shaking hands, but my mom was the Norwegian. She was like my grandma, hug, kiss you on the lips my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not like that never changed, right? And that was just the way she was, the way my grandma was, that's just the way they were. But my dad was really, but then it was interesting because I hit a point in my life after my freshman year in college, and this is a whole nother story. I think Tim knows this. Is I had a horrible car accident and I almost died. I was flown life flight to Portland Emmanuel Hospital, and I had a whole team of surgeons work on me, trauma unit.
Wow.
And by the grace of God, I lived. And my dad and my mom and my sister I was there just short of 3 weeks. It's a miracle because I almost died. And less than 3 weeks later, I was released from the hospital. My dad, my mom, and my sister were there every day to be there with me at the hospital. Yeah.
Wow.
And so anyway, my point of that whole story was, I'm sorry, I missed my point.
No.
I went into this story. The point of that story is that things kind of changed after that. I started hugging my dad again.
Yep.
I got older and I started realizing he wasn't going to be around forever. And then I really started hugging him more when I knew that he was going through the cancer stuff. And then when it was pretty evident it was coming back towards the end of his life. And so, I got, and he was fine with that too. He'd hug me back, but we went through that stage of all that stuff, like guys do. I think it's a guy thing.
I don't know if you've heard my story. I think that is actually the greatest gift of cancer, is that opportunity to say goodbye, right? And to, reinstate the hug rule or whatever. I always say, if I knew my mom was going to die on a certain day, I would have preferred cancer over something like a heart attack or a car accident, because I had the opportunity to hug her and say goodbye. So it sounds like you had that too, Russ.
Yeah, I did. And I have a little video that I think my son took towards the end when they were in their independent living apartment, and I'm hugging my dad and he's talking to me. Um, and so I have that, and I have a ton of things for my mom. Tim knows all about that. But, the beautiful thing about that too, with both my parents, is I did get to leave them. I was not there when either of them passed. I had been with my dad for a couple days, and I told the caregiver late at night, they got him. It's a long story, but just to sum it up, the way I left my dad is he had been horrible pain, and hospice got his pain under control. I'd been praying for him and talking with him, and it was bad, but they got him peaceful and calm. He laid down in bed, and then he called for my mom, and he says, "I love you, Mama." And she laid down on the bed next to him, and she goes, "I love you, Papa." And they just basically laid down to go to sleep. And I told the caregiver, I am just wiped. I got to go home and get a little sleep. But I left them in such a good moment, and I was secure with no matter what happened. And they called me about an hour later, and he had stopped breathing. And same thing with my mom. It was just a few hours after I left her, but my wife kept asking me, "Are you going to be okay if she goes when you're not there?" And I said, "Yes," because every time I leave, I make sure I'm hugging her, that I'm talking to her, that I'm praying with her. I'm doing things, and I feel good about how I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've, had that moment. So if it happens, so that was really the way it happened with both of them. And so, yeah, it was, as tough as it was a good thing that I was able to reinstate, like you said, those things with my dad too.
Yeah. Wow. That is a really moving story, Russ. And what I heard in that is that you chose to let go through love and peace. And that's really beautiful. So thank you for saying that. Yeah.
I'm a big believer, as you could tell by the name of my book, and live the life you choose.
Yeah.
And so, and you know what? You and I were talking about this before. There's a lot of things in life that might be simple, but life is not easy. And we have a choice every moment to do what it takes to live the life we choose. Because, so many people tell me all the time, well, I have no control over what happens to me. And my reply to them is, you're right. Absolutely, you don't. But you have a choice. What do you do from there? How do you live your life when things happen to you? Where do you go? What are the choices you make?
Yeah.
That's how you live the life you choose, not by affecting all the things that happen to you, because we have no control over that, by affecting what you do from that point on.
100%. Yeah. Whenever someone says, there's nothing I can do, and it always sort of catches me, because there are still choices. And that is a really powerful reminder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ. Yep. So you talked about, a lot of the logistical and legal elements of the final days, not only of just actually your dad, but also your mom, things like healthcare directives, or even, selling houses. How much do you think taking care of those and addressing those, again, like doing the hard things, impacted your ability to be physically and emotionally present for them at the end of life?
Oh my goodness. It was amazing. So first of all, let me say that I'm blessed with an amazing, beautiful wife who loves me and helps me. Yeah, she knows. I tell her, I'm sure she is. I am blessed because she is always 10 steps ahead of me. And I mean that in a positive way. She's always thinking ahead and she's very kind and loving and planting thoughts in my mind and helping me, right? She's helping me along. From the time we met, she's been this way. She is helping direct me in a positive way without like trying to take over and tell me what to do, right? So what happened was she really got me moving in the right direction, I took a long time to convince my dad. I was blessed that my mom and dad made the decision to sell their house and move.
Yeah.
Had they not been having troubles physically, they probably wouldn't have done that. My dad probably never would have sold. But because they were having troubles, I convinced him, but then I had to reconvince him like 5 times because he kept changing his mind. We'd be about to sell the home and nope, changed my mind. We're not going to do it. And so this whole thing went through. And anyway, it was funny because my dad, you'll find this interesting. When I finally, like for the 5th time, convinced my dad and we had the realtor and we're moving forward, he looks at me and he goes, "Man, you are a damn good salesman, son." And I said, "Got it from you, Dad. You are my model for being a sales guy." I mean, that was it. And so, the thing is just convincing him in a positive way that it was the best thing for them.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to make those changes. And ultimately, I'll tell you that because we made those changes, the answer to your question is it made things so much easier because there was so many rough moments through this whole thing. I had to do things like, first of all, convince them to move. Second of all, with my beautiful wife's help, recognize they didn't know how to take their medication anymore. And I had to bring in a caregiver to help me, part-time caregiver, so we could work together and she could help me with that. So we both did part of that. Then I had to take away the car. I had to actually take the car keys because my dad actually had his car still. Then I had to take away the dog because they had a dog. And because they were about to get kicked out of their living situation because my dad wouldn't follow the rules, part of because he wasn't completely thinking correctly, but also part of because he was stubborn. I had to do all these things. And then that was blow ups, right? My dad's yelling for the police. He's telling people to call the police on me and do all this stuff. I mean, it was some rough moments.
That's hard.
But we moved through all this and I kept showing up like we're talking about. And the beautiful thing I learned about, because my dad had really bad dementia at the end too, you would leave for an hour or two. And when you came back, it was a whole new situation. He hugged me, told me he loved me, realized what I wanted the best for them. And it had changed, right? It had changed from confrontational. I learned just to leave when that happened. I learned to walk away and come back. And so anyway, because of all of that, when we get down to the end of it, all they have left is what's in their apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even have any investments or other things. They just had the money from their house. They were paying the bill for their room, for their apartment, and them and their stuff. So it made life a lot easier because I didn't have to, when he passed, I didn't have to do any things with houses, with investments, with any stuff. It made my job a lot easier. And I would encourage anybody, think ahead, what's coming up, what could happen, prepare. My dad, part of the preparation, I prodded him and he put together their wills. They updated their wills, put me on the bank account, did all of those things that helped me with the process. And I knew everything that had to happen. So yeah, that made it so much easier.
Yeah. And, grief is so tricky, and to have to deal with administrative things while you're dealing with grief. And I would say grief before and after your dad passed too.
Yeah.
Right? There's like the pre-grief, So kudos to you to do the hard thing, but the right thing.
Yeah. Thank you. I would say the only thing that was really kind of tough, which is simple compared to most things, was having that grief and being at that point and then having to go to the funeral home and make decisions and things. That alone is hard, right?
Yeah.
That alone is hard,
God.
making those decisions and what you need to do, even with some direction. But man, having to do everything else on top of it, I'm just really blessed I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Really well said, Russ. Thank you.
So Russ, you're one of the most positive people I know. Do you get that from your dad or your mom, or how do you get all this whoop whoop all the time?
Well, there is some, I always kid my kids that they are a combination of their mom and I, which they are. I was a combination of my mom and dad, but I'm really my mom. I'm my mom's son. She's the whoop whoop, the showy.
Yeah.
From the time I was little, she's like, stand up and sing for everybody, Russell. Get up and do this and do that, put on a show. That was totally my mom. Now, the positive stuff, my dad, from a sales perspective, he was loved and everybody thought he was great. And I learned a lot from him, how to treat people and deal with people. But the actual personality was my mom. I'm outgoing. Things roll off me really easy. I deal with life very positively. It's the way I'm made, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
blessed with that, and that's definitely my mom.
Wow. Yeah.
Awesome.
And we talked a lot, obviously, about choice. So what mindset did you choose during your dad's final months of life? And maybe, where did you stumble?
Yeah, well, I've always chosen to be positive. I've always looked at the bright side. I'm really good at compartmentalizing life. And I don't know if
Mm,
people can relate to that, but I'm really good at compartmentalizing, keeping a positive outlook here and compartmentalizing negative things here. So they're not gone, but I'm not focusing on them, right? That's really helps. That's my personality, which is a blessing. But, where I stumbled was learning how to deal with being the parent of my parents.
ah,
My dad, when he started suffering with dementia on top of the lung cancer, he would he had really bad what's called sundowners. He'd call me in the
mm,
middle of the night and tell me that the city he's in, Kaiser, was shut down and there was no way in or out, and I couldn't even come over to visit him. I mean, he was having delusions, right?
wow.
But he
Yeah.
also would get mad at me and
Mm,
start to get almost kind of physical, but he was so frail and old that he couldn't really. I had took one step back and he couldn't do it because because he was frail. I mean, you got to laugh sometimes. It was,
yeah,
there was
of
times when it
course.
was kind of funny actually. I've
Yeah.
got some really good stories actually, which are a whole nother show. But he yeah, I mean, when it first started happening, I would get mad and I would yell back at him. Sure, Dad, act like a 3-year-old. Be that way. And I would get mad. And then I would think to myself, well, that really helped a lot. That really helped because that did nothing but make it all worse. Right.
Mm,
So that's when I learned that you walk away and you come back and everything changes. And part
yeah.
of that was my dad's teaching. Actually, he used to tell me when I was a kid, one of his favorite phrases was, tomorrow's a new day. And what he meant by that is today may be horrible. There might be lots of stuff going on, but there's always there's always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or rainbow at the end of the rain, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
say. Tomorrow is a new day. It'll
Yeah.
be you'll have a fresh look, a fresh perspective. Everything will be better. And so that's kind of, I adopted that, and that's kind of what I did. And I learned a lot from that.
Yeah. So you did get some of it from your dad, Russ.
Oh, absolutely. No, I did totally. I mean, like I said, my mom is my personality, but my
Yeah.
dad, oh my goodness, he was my hero. He taught me so
Mm,
much. Back before it was cool to go to work with your parents, before they had go to work with your parent day or whatever,
yep.
he would take me with him to work and I would go on his
Wow.
sales route with him. And it was amazing. I loved it. And everybody loved my dad. I learned a ton.
Yeah. That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah. And then, end of life too. I got some advice. My mom got very cranky towards the end, and it really hurt me because that wasn't her, right? It's not the
Right.
memory that you have. And I was given a coaching to say that's not her, that's the disease. And you have to separate the two. So, good on you for having that mindset, Russ, and to see the difference there and to remember tomorrow's a new day.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because out of my wife and I'm the positive, upbeat, really outgoing one, right? She's more private and shy and not as positive as me. And but she during all of this said what you just said exactly to me.
Mm.
She was always very thoughtful and like I said, she's always 10 steps ahead of me. But she would say, "This is not your dad. That's not your dad. That's not your mom." Because she had known my parents for years and they were great in laws to her. We both have been blessed with wonderful parents. Her parents are still alive and are amazing. Right. And so yeah, so she would say, "That's not your dad." And so that would help me a lot.
Yeah. You two sound like a dynamic duo.
Well, we do make a good team.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Shout out to your wife. Shout out to all the spouses out there,
Yes.
for
I give
sure.
huge shout out to my wife. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Russ, could you share with us, have you done anything in terms of self-care, either while you were a caregiver or at any point in the journey of your dad or your mom?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, before I even knew the term self-care, I was a big proponent of making sure my wife and I would get away somewhere, or our family would get away somewhere, or we would do things that would be positive, right? Be positive in our life. And um, even today, I just told my wife earlier, because the last time I went through kind of some grief, she said to me, "Hey, let's go visit our friends. Let's get away. Let's go do something." So we just went over, hung out for the evening with friends and talked. And I told her earlier today, "Hey, let's, when I get off the shows today, when I get done working, why don't we just go visit your parents or do something? Let's get to a different situation because that will help me." And so I've always been a big proponent of doing things that help with my mindset, with my care. And because during work hours and during my normal life, I'm horrible. I'm horrible. I'll admit it. I'm horrible. I work,
Yeah.
I cram too much in. I try to,
Preach it.
yeah, I'm not good. So I have to separate myself totally. And we just got away with our family for a week in California. And then my kids are both coming for the weekend because we're having a private service for my mama this weekend. And so, but that's good. The time away was amazing because it wasn't at home. I didn't have any chores to do or anything to take care of. Very quiet, peaceful where we went. And so, yeah, I mean, those kind of things have really helped me. But it's not my natural bent, Tim, to take care of myself. So I have to be very intentional about doing that.
Yeah. And this is kind of what you were talking about, but Dr. Alex here said, how did you balance all of this along with your business, especially while your dad was going through the cancer? How were you able to
Yeah.
balance all that?
Well, I was actually working for another company when dad was going through his cancer. But I had a sales and marketing job and I had a very flexible schedule, which was a plus. I have always been in sales and marketing. I've always had a schedule that I make, right? So I've always been able to manipulate that schedule in a positive way because I always worked so many hours. The job that I worked before I started my own business, I would probably average 10 to 12 hours a day. So if I took a couple hours out of the middle of the day, no big deal because I mean, I was already working way more hours than I was being paid for anyway. So that's what I did with my dad and my mom at the beginning because I didn't start my own business until COVID hit. Um, and
Right.
so that helped me a lot having that type of job. If I had a job where I had to be at a desk 8 hours a day, it would have been a lot more difficult. I think I was
Sure.
really blessed to have that kind of a job. And somebody else, I see Alex's thing. Somebody else said something Alex also asked if my mom knew I was doing live streaming.
Yeah.
My very first podcast was Happy Moments with Mama. It was an audio podcast. And yes, she knew. She still had enough with it. She knew what we were doing, and we were recording these podcasts that I put out. So there's like 5 or 6 podcasts that I put out, which were just audio, Happy Moments with Mama. And then we would do what we called Lappin' and Laughin'. And we would walk around the hallway was a big circle in her memory care. And I would take videos of us singing and laughing. And that was just my mom totally. And was both of us. We had so much fun. And I have so many of those that are on. You can go to my YouTube page back at the beginning and see some of them. But yeah, those things have been a blessing for both my parents. But it's been a blessing to have good memories. Yeah.
I think that's the most important is remembering the good times, right? And that
Right.
helps with the mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely helps. That's what I focus on.
Yeah. So what part of your dad's legacy, Russ, means the most to you? And what do you think the top lessons that he left with you?
The importance of family, really. I mean, he was always huge. Like I said, the family really rallied around him.
Yeah.
And I became my parents. I mean, and my dad when I had kids, right? The minute my kids are going anywhere to preschool, I'm in there talking to the teachers and sitting in class and helping with whatever. And then in school, I was on all the committees and I was coaching and I was doing whatever. I mean, my kids couldn't get rid of me at school. And so it was the same thing. The importance of being involved with your own immediate family, but then staying connected to your family, right? All your family, your cousins and your, whatever that's all very important to me. So that would be the legacy that he left. He was really, really all about family.
Yeah. It's about showing up.
Yep.
It's like you are the equivalent of your dad in the truck overlooking the stadium.
Yep. And and it was funny because my dad was always like, it was interesting because this is where some of this would come out. He'd go, "Yep, yep, you should have." The last 2 years of my football career, I'll tell you, I had started all the way up and had a great career, and I love football. In the last 2 years, I was backup quarterback, which was totally fine with me. We had a great team. I played a lot still, and it was fun. But my dad never believed that I shouldn't be the starting quarterback. He watched and he knew, and I'd always tell him, "Dad, it's okay. The other guy is actually better than me, but it's fine. I'm having fun. I'm not upset." But my dad, he'd be up there watching and he'd be telling me all the things he saw. And my mom would always be like, Curtis, just leave him alone. And so, that showed he loved me. He cared, and he always wanted the best for me, and always thought I was the greatest thing. Both my parents did, which always the reason why I probably had an inflated ego growing up. I'm sure it was very, very well. No, I had an inflated ego. I thought very highly of myself,
You
and
should.
so not that
Yeah.
yeah, well, but not that I don't think highly of myself now in a good way. I've learned as I've become more mature, and now I'm 58 years young. I've learned how to have a good self-image, but not be so egotistical and
Right.
thinking life is all about you.
Yeah. It was a balance
there
of
you go.
confidence and humility. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
totally, totally. But back then, I took all that in, and I just thought, yeah, I'm all that and a bag of chips, and I wasn't quite as good as I thought. But
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
Quick follow-up though, Russ. What do you think that your kids think about your dad? So, their grandfather. What do you think they took away from his legacy?
well, they were super blessed to. We had kids pretty young. My wife and I were married 22 and 23, and so we had our kids in our 20s, and so they got to experience a lot of life with my parents and her parents, and which was great. And they have really fond memories. In fact, I wish I should have brought it in. I have a great picture of. Oh wait, I've got it right here. Hang on a sec.
Oh, let's see it.
I've got a great picture of my kids. This is
Great.
with my mom. So I'm just going to show you this one of my mom, but it's the same way that they felt about my parents. They had a good growing up, and my parents actually watched my daughter when she was young, and they always moved all of life, heaven and earth. When my kids came over, it was all about them. And oh, brother, don't tell me I'm not going to be able to find it. I really wanted to show you this picture, but anyway, it's my kids laughing with my mom, and it was such a telling moment and picture. And now I'm not going to be able to find it. When you want something is when you can't
I
find it,
know.
right?
Murphy's Law.
Yeah. Anyway, if I'll just glance as I'm telling you this, but it was just they had a really good childhood with my parents, and they would tell you that the most important thing I'm not going to search anymore. The most important thing to my parents when they were around was them. And so that goes back to family. That my parents basically stopped life and just focused on my kids, which I don't know is always the best way to do it. My in-laws were more like, you guys are highly important, but we're going to keep doing life and you're going to do it with us, right? My parents were like, stop everything we normally do and we're just going to focus on you, which I mean, no, either way is good. But my kids had a lot of great, great, great moments with my dad and my mom. And so, yeah, they were both. My niece and nephew were younger, and so they got more in on the areas where my parents were starting to fail. And they, not that they don't have good moments. I don't mean that, but it was rougher for them. My kids got in on the healthy parts of my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like they still got that legacy of presence and family.
Yep. And you know what? This whole time I've been searching for the photo. It's right in front of me. Hang on a second.
There you go. There you go.
I thought it was in my Bible, but it's right here. These are my two kids with my mom.
What? I love that. Look at the joy.
That is completely,
Such
and
big
all the
smiles.
moments with mom and
That's
dad
joy.
were both that way. They're just, but my
That
mom
is
was always
joy.
laughing, and my kids, they're both. This is only probably, I'm trying to think how many years ago now. This is probably 5 years ago, maybe, this picture. And I loved this picture because it just showed the joy my mom had. But my dad, again, also was always so filled with joy around my kids. So that was how they felt about their childhood and their grandparents.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Russ, for sharing that and your story. I think that photo was just pure joy.
Yes. Sorry it took me so long to find it.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I want to go to the comments for a minute. Mark Kageyama says, family is everything in all caps.
Truth.
Yep.
Dr. Alex says, we love dads.
We
Melody
sure do.
says, yeah. Melody says, your mom sounds like an extrovert and your dad an introvert. Does that sound right, Russ?
Yeah, that's definitely true. My dad was an introvert that made himself, his sales career. He made that, but my mom was naturally the extrovert for sure.
Oh, okay, cool. Joseph is here. He says, Team Boomified in the house. Boom. Thanks for being here,
Boom.
Joseph.
Boom.
Joseph is awesome.
Gotta
If you're not
love these
connected to him,
people.
Erica, you should be.
Okay, well, it sounds like I need to be.
Yes.
Joseph is
Thank you all.
awesome, and Alex is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Russ, what is the silver lining in your dad's cancer journey?
Well, the silver lining, I think, is my dad lived a wonderful life. Really, he left a legacy of a family and somebody who cared deeply for people and for his family. My dad and mom were always involved with people, caring for people, helping people. My dad would be the first out to customers of his with his business. He'd go to their home and help them do something at their home, and he would help. He just loved people. And so, you've heard me say it before, Tim. I mean, I'm a lifetime connector. I love to build community. I love people. And so all of you watching, if we're not connected, go to russhedge.com and connect with me today, because I would love to connect with you. And my dad was that way. He wanted to connect with people. He wanted to love people. And both my parents were that way. It was amazing.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, Russ. Thank you for sharing your dad's story. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. Is there anything else that you want to ask Erica or say?
I'd actually be interested in this question I just thought of, Russ. If you could describe your dad's cancer journey or your perspective on cancer in one word, what would it be?
Very interesting. Well, I think that I'm trying to think one word. I really think the word that comes to my mind is life. And what I mean by that is I would add live life to that. But my dad lived life right to the end, as rough as it got. And I mean, we had some really rough, not great moments, but my dad was all about he just kept showing up, kept doing stuff, living life. And it was, even when it got really rough, he was trying to do stuff. He was trying to live life. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I'd be interested in asking that to our community, Tim. If you could sum up what you've heard today or your own personal perspective on cancer in one word, put that in the comments. I'm curious to what we can come up with today. Tim, what's your answer?
Yes. Ooh, what's my answer? What was the question again? One word.
One word. Your perspective on either Russ's journey, your journey, or on cancer. What's your one word?
Oh, that's a
hard one. I know.
One word. Erica, one word.
I know.
My perspective on I guess for me, in terms of my perspective as a cancer survivor, my one word would be community. I've connected with so many people as a result of being a cancer survivor and the show and everything.
Absolutely.
What about you, Erica?
I had a few more seconds to think about it. So my word is bittersweet.
Ooh.
And the reason I say that, again, I never wish cancer on my biggest enemy. But at the same time, I think there are so many gifts of perspective. All of us who have experienced it can say, life is short, and it's, we can let go of the small stuff, that perspective. I just think there's some silver linings. I've seen some really beautiful, beautiful moments, beautiful goodbyes. So it's bittersweet's my word, Tim.
I love that. That's such a good word.
Can I just add into that? I think
Yeah.
perspective is such a gift.
Yes.
And I know your whole show is about perspectives on cancer, but it's such a gift because we're so narrow focused in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, let's face it. All of our favorite subject is us, and our focus is on what we're doing. I mean, generally, you have to widen your perspective or you're not. So I think situations like this that force you to widen your perspective are a gift from God.
Yes.
COVID was a gift from God in that perspective. I'm not saying COVID itself, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Because all of these bad things, people always get so focused on this, and they are bad. Let's just all agree that bad things are bad. Cancer is bad. COVID was bad. There's all these things. They're bad, period. There's no good, happy thing about that. But your perspectives and what you learn and how you grow and how you become stronger are gifts. They're gifts from God just in our life, because then we get to move forward with a wider, broader perspective and more thoughtful of other people and other situations that are going on because of what we've gone through.
Yeah. And, like you started off with, Russ, that perspective is a choice. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not always an easy choice, right? We talked about easy versus simple. It's not an easy choice, but it is a choice. And so thank you for the gift of your wisdom and for raising that for us, and perspective. That might be the word. Maybe that's the word, is perspective.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's so many good ones. Honestly, people can come up with a ton of that would be so good, and I would agree with so many different words. But there's always, when you think about it, I'm a big, I go with my gut. So like that word life came to me immediately because that's what my dad. If you ask me, my mom, I wouldn't even have to think about it. Joy.
Yes.
My mom lived joy to the last second till she stopped breathing. She was just full of joy. That's her, period. My dad was just always going, moving, living life, doing. That's just him. So, I mean, I think most people, if you don't give it a lot of thought, you have the word right there. It's when you stop and think too much about it that it becomes difficult.
Right. You got to just go with your gut. I'm with you, Russ.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that.
Yep.
That's excellent. So true. So true. Well, thank you so much, Russ.
Thank you
so
Russ.
much for showing up.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. What a blessing. I appreciate both of you.
Oh, we love you, Russ. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks. What do you think, Erica?
Whew. I mean, I needed that shot of perspective in the arm, and Russ gave it to me today. He really does have such a beautiful story, beautiful perspective, and I'm so glad we got to talk to him.
I am too. And Russ is also just, he's a great friend. He sends me a text every morning and says, praying for you and your family. And he's just such a great human being. He's great at humaning, if that's a word.
Yes. Yep. He's an excellent human.
He is an excellent human. Yes.
Yeah. Humankind, be both. That's Russ.
Yes, exactly. So thank you everyone for showing up. We are always looking for guests who want to be on the show, whatever your connection and perspective is on cancer. So if you would like to be a guest on the show, please send me a direct message and would love to have a conversation with you. And Erica, who is our guest next week on Showing Up?
Our guest next week is Pamela McCullough. Her connection to cancer is that she's a colon and liver cancer survivor. So she's going to have some really impactful, inspiring stories to tell. She's an author as well as a podcaster. So going to be a beautiful storyteller. Let's all show up and support Pamela next week.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to that conversation. She recently had me on her podcast, so looking forward to that show for sure.
Awesome.
And I just want to remind everyone that the showtime is at 3:00 Eastern time. If you're here, you realize that. If you're on the replay, a reminder that the show going forward and today is at 3:00 Eastern time. And also just a reminder that the in-person Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer event is coming up on September 10th here in Pennsylvania. It is now free thanks to partnerships with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and all of our partners. You can sign up at perspectivesoncancer.com. So thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. We're going to go out the same way that we do every week here. Let's dance.
Dance party.